For 10 seconds of pleasure, a life can end up 60 plus years of suffering. You know, when I think about how fast the, the, the male orgasm happens and the consequence of that thoughtless, impulsive action, you know, it's a very big burden on my mind to think about. You know, that for 10 seconds, someone can cause a non-being to suffer 50 to 60, possibly 100 years of agony, torment, pain, general misery, and then ultimately death at the end of that. And it infuriates me to no end that this is the case every day on this planet. That people are having thoughtless, meaningless, mindless sex, and they are producing lifetimes of suffering, tears, depressions, worries, strifes, sicknesses, and ultimately death for no apparent reason other than to please some impulsive desire that they have. It's pure impulse, pure biology, pure blind, uncaring, not giving a fuck biology. And people heed to it day in and day out. They give in to it without a fight. They rush to do it without a single thought about the consequences of that action. I've thought about it all my life, really. The fact that I'm here because two people had mindless sex and without my consent brought me down into misery to fulfill some kind of a ego-driven desire for prodigy, I guess. And really, I can't even say that because how many people have children thinking about the consequence? They usually just have sex and the child is just a byproduct of that unfortunate event. But, you know, it sickens me how easy it is to impose life onto beings who did not exist and who were not bothered by non-existence, who did not need anything, who did not want anything, who did not desire things, who did not have to flee from pain, who didn't have to worry about bills, doctors, medical care, retirement, and their life's ambition. They didn't have to worry about it. They didn't have to worry about where they would be for 50 plus years. You know, they didn't have to worry about how they were going to live their lives, how they're going to provide for themselves. But because two people had unprotected sex, a child is born into the world and made to endure, made to suffer, and made to die. And how that process undertakes is different for each individual. But the ultimate end is always going to be unpleasant. You know, whether the baby dies of disease, of accidents, or by its own hand in suicide, the end result of the human being is tragic. The end result is a pointless death for no other reason than the fact that they were born into this world, which is demanding them to die the very moment they are born. And people thoughtlessly, carelessly impose this over and over and over again. They gather together at funerals and have the audacity to cry. And then they go and make more babies who will repeat the same process over and over and over again Their tears of regret are nothing but a facade, a sheer facade, because if they really cared, they would stop the process in its tracks. They wouldn't bother to keep it going. But they keep it going, and they keep it reproducing the same cycle of suffering and death over and over again. And for what? 10 seconds of sexual bliss, 10 seconds of carnal pleasure that sends a person into a lifetime of misery and strife. And even if that person lives a decent life and are happy, at the end they can always take a turn for the worse and have to endure misery and agonizing death and then silence. And how that happens is never known. It's never predicted. You can never predict the fate of a child. And people justify it different ways. You know, they say that suffering is a builder of character. They say, oh, well, life would be boring if we didn't have suffering. And, you know, in society, you just see this glorification of making babies suffer, making new people to suffer, to come down here and to suffer, all for some fake bullshit ideal of building character in the worst fucking ways possible. I remember a story that I saw on the news where this mother who went crazy took her infant children and put them into an oven. And she killed those babies in the oven. And she filmed the whole ideal. And then after it was done, she sent the film to their father. Now, you mean to tell me that the death of those innocent babies served some kind of purpose for their own benefit? You mean to tell me that things that happen to children that way happen for their character development? Absolutely fucking stupid bullshit. It happened because two people were inconsiderate and brought them down to suffer and die that way. And their story is not unique. It's going to keep happening because people are blindly giving in to this impulse without any second thought. They don't care about their children. They don't care about their futures. Because if you truly cared about your child, if you truly loved your child, you would realize that the best thing you can possibly do for that child is to not bring them into existence, is to save them from needless harm, suffering, and death. If you can make that choice to not subjugate your children to a world like this, where the possibility of harm and death is endless, then I'll believe you when you say that you love your children. Because to love your children is to keep them from this hell.